Episode 69. Are you aware?
This is the One Extraordinary Marriage Podcast, home of the 7 Days of Sex Challenge, featuring your hosts, the authors of the groundbreaking new book, Stripped Down, Tony and Elisa DiLorenzo.
Welcome back to One Extraordinary Marriage, where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of intimacy. You're here with Elisa DiLorenzo.
And Tony DiLorenzo.
And first and foremost, we're getting ready to launch the second annual 7 Days of Sex Challenge.
That's right. We are the home of the 7 Days of Sex Challenge. And this next one will be held May 8th through 14th, 2011. So
the clock's ticking.
Yeah, so those of you who listened to this in like 2012, there'll be another one.
Wow, jumping ahead a whole nother year.
I know.
I'm thinking if you've been listening to us last year and you want to do it again, here's your chance. And you're already talking to the 2012 listeners.
Yeah, for those of you who didn't catch it last year, it was a blast. So go to the website, oneextraordinarymarriage.com. We've posted the announcement blog post called Here We Go Again, second annual 7 Days of Sex Challenge. And you can get all the information there. There's loads of information. There's loads of ways that you can share this with your friends. I think right now the biggest thing is we're little less than 3 weeks out. And the biggest thing I would say is if this is something you want to do with your spouse, this is the perfect time to start talking to them about it. Because last year, we had people spring it on their spouse at the last minute.
Not that it didn't work for them.
Not that it didn't work for them.
But it doesn't always work.
But it does.
If you spring it on a spouse.
Right. So start talking about it. It's that whole, the communication thing we talk about, that emotional and intellectual intimacy that you guys can have. And start talking about this because it's 7 days.
Or nights or days and nights.
And days. But 7 consecutive.
Right.
And for our friends out in Australia and South Africa, we'll figure out your times. So Mary, you can hit me up.
We're doing 7 days consecutive, around May 7th or 8th.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But it really is a time to start talking about what is involved. And Elise and I coming up with the dates, even for us, it's like, okay, we're doing this again.
Right. And, one of the things that we learned last year when we tried to do it over the summer is, like a lot of you, there are summer vacations. The kids are out in school. You've got a few more challenges with, those of you that have children when they're around all the time. And so we actually backed it up a month to try and eliminate the vacation and kids are home all the time, to give you guys a boost in terms of, success rate. Because we did hear from a lot of people. You were either traveling or you had family in, and many of you made it happen in spite of those challenges. We did. We actually were getting ready to speak at a marriage retreat at the end of that week, and we still pulled it off.
And this time we did put this. We're doing this earlier. Our marriage retreat is June
10th, 11th,
through
and 12th.
Yeah, and this year we just decided not to do it around there. It was a little hectic for us, and we want our marriage retreat to be about us. We had such a good time on this last trip to Puerto Rico without computers and phones and everything. We're going to do the same thing, So we wanted to put this at a time that worked for us as well as you guys, because we want you to be successful in it. So start talking about it, thinking about it. And here's something else too. Is that it's a week, and we really hone in on the physical, the sexual intimacy. But realize this week doesn't have to be for naught if you're unable to do all 7 days. We talk physically, yes, because we talk about 6 forms of intimacy, and this week could be used just as well, talking about each one of those intimacies each day.
Mm-hmm. We had a number of couples last year that were not able to be physically intimate due to health reasons, a number of different reasons. And if you go back to the daily comments from last year, you would see some of those in there. But they still made intimacy a priority for 7 consecutive days and reaped the benefits of that focus on intimacy in their marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You sure can.
I mean, it was just, it was amazing, to read and hear about their efforts. Because even though we do focus on the physical in this, they said, you know what, we can't do that. But we are still, we're going to pray together every day. We are going to walk together every day. We are going to, whatever it was.
Talk about our finances.
We are going to be together, present every day for a period of time. And they did.
Yeah.
And we talk about doing this. It's a time to renew your marriage by, creating this focus on intimacy. It's not a cure-all.
No.
If your marriage is having major problems, a focus on having intimacy or being intimate for 7 days is not going to solve all your problems.
No, it really isn't. Unfortunately, it can almost drive a wedge in between you and split you up even more because there's so much underlying tension. So look at that in your marriage, and it might not be the time for you right now. But what we do hope is that maybe it sparks something in you to realize that maybe there's some unresolved issues going on in your life that have been going on in your life for months, years, before you got married, and you're still holding on to this stuff. And maybe this is the time for you to really come into prayer with God and seek some help, some guidance. Folks, if there's one thing that we hear over and over again is that it's many of marriages that don't seek help and it just goes down the drain. It does. You can find folks out there. You have to be willing. And just like anything else, you interview people. I've learned over the years that when you are working with a coach, when you're working with a counselor, you have every right as the paying individual or couple to interview. Get a 30-minute consultation.
And even if you're not paying, let's say your church offers counseling services, if it's not a fit for you with the first counselor, it's okay to say that.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, even if it's on a volunteer basis, because the two of you have to be able to be open and honest with whoever you're working with. So regardless of whether if you're the one receiving the service, the person giving the service has to work with you.
Yeah.
Mesh with your personalities, and you both have to feel comfortable with this person, because let's face it, if you've got stuff that you have literally stuffed down so far that maybe your spouse doesn't even know, it's going to take, you got to peel back those layers, and it's got to be in a safe environment.
Yeah. And wow. One of the hardest things is, I think, when we're in our marriages, is that when we do have these issues and they're unresolved, the devil's really working his magic on us, his tricks, because we feel alone and isolated, and that if we mention something to our spouse, it's going to be over. There's going to be a divorce. There's going to be a separation. They're going to move out. Whatever it might be that's running around in your head. What I suggest you do is sit down with your spouse, pray, obviously, if you can, together beforehand. But when you come together and talk, I think the biggest thing you got to look at, and it's one thing that Elisa and I did many years ago, is that we had to wipe away that we weren't going to get divorced, we weren't going to get separated. Understanding that, obviously, physical abuse, emotional abuse, this goes beyond that normal realm. So if you're in that type of a relationship, you need to seek help. For Elisa and I, we had some massive issues between us, though those of physical abuse or emotional abuse were not involved. But even so, I can recall just even with pornography or telling her about other stuff that has happened in my life, being so scared to bring these things up. Because if I did, what was going to be the backlash? So when we did talk to each other and we finally put it out there that divorce wasn't an option, that allowed me to come clean. Did it take time? Sure. It's taken Elisa time to come clean on issues as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just just
blurt it all out
and just dump it on them. You're going to have a lot of things to wade through. So, I know it sort of got on a little tangent.
Yeah, it's just some people look at the 7 days of sex challenge, and when you read the stories, if you go back through last year, there were some, and I will use the word miraculous stories.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I need to put the caveat on the 7 days of sex challenge that while it can do amazing and will do amazing things for your marriage, you may be a couple out there, like Tony said, for whom this is not the right time. And you need to be aware of that. I mean, we're going to be talking about this for the next 3 weeks. We're going to be, looking for you guys to, I don't know, you're going to have them sign up, or what? Is there going to be a sign up? Okay.
Yeah, they do the comments below.
Okay.
Like
comments below last year.
Name, how long you've been married. And
so, we are going to be asking. We're going to want to know about you guys, and we're hoping to maybe even pick up a few more countries. We know we've got our friends in Australia, and we've got our friends in South Africa and Holland and Canada. And so we're looking for you guys to spread the word and see if we can't pick up a few more countries this year, in addition to all of our wonderful couples here in the States. But, be on board with this together. Get excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Start planning now. Okay, what are we going to do for those 7 days? Is there going to be time where, somebody can come home from work early, or maybe you've got, you can do a lunchtime, nooner. You can, sneak out in the backyard after the kids go to bed. You can light candles in the living room. I mean, I'm just throwing these things out now just to kind of wet your whistle and get your brainstorming on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start talking about it now, I mean, you've got 3 weeks to plan. You might have more than 7 days of fun planned by the time we get there.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Which is
go longer.
Totally fine.
But, it's like with everything we do. We've heard from some couples who are like, oh, this was a little bit more challenging than we thought it was going to be.
Oh, it can be.
And it will be. I mean, you will find that this will be the week that kids get sick, and this will be the week that you've got those deadlines at work, and this will be the week that, somebody needs you to stay late after a meeting and help out, and you're like, I'm on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
He's waiting for me. She's waiting for me. And we had people last year that said, you know what, I got to go. I got a date with my husband, and clock's ticking, and you're not the one important right now.
Right.
So be aware, like Tony said, devil's he's not going to be real happy about this. And you're going to have those challenges that you're like, really? Any other 7 days, this would not have happened. It will happen in the 7 days. I can promise you.
Right. The coolest thing is, though, that you make a commitment and you have fun. Have fun, smile, laugh, try new things. That's what it's about. It's about getting away from what we do all the time and just pushing that envelope a little bit together.
Yep.
And, it's just joyous and it's fun. And yes, it can be work. It can be a lot of work for us males who can't ejaculate after like the third or fourth day. We're tired. We're beat down. But you know what? It's about being in this marriage, supporting each other, and just having a good time.
Being together.
Yeah.
Being together.
So
we'll talk about it more as comments start to come in and as we, start to see how this all formulates together. I think we're going to have some daily prizes.
We got daily prizes. I got
daily prizes from a number. If you read
ebooks, if just you read everything.
That first thing, go all the way through to the bottom. You'll be thankful that you did, because there's a lot of information in there, and you'll be, happy to read all that and just get an idea. And if you've got questions, shoot them off to us. We've been through it. couple times now. This will be what, our third challenge together? 60, 1, 2, 3. Fourth. Okay, fourth time. Oh yeah, because we did it that one time that we didn't. This will be our third 7-day challenge.
This is our third 7-day, and then 6.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit of experience here, and there are enough people in the community that have done 60-day challenges and 7-day challenges.
Yeah.
That, you know, if we throw out a question, if you pose a question to us that we don't know an answer to, we'll throw it out to the community and get you the feedback.
Yeah, we need to hear some we did it's too.
Well, I'm hoping that in a couple weeks, our phones are going to be ringing off the hook.
So if you have to call us for any reason, 858-876-5663. Why are you talking over me tonight?
Sorry, I will stop.
Talking? Gosh.
They're going to call me on it. I'm going to get emails now. I'm just so excited. I don't know. I hear the music and I heard the 7 Days of Sex challenge in the intro. And then I was like, ooh, we're talking about the next one.
Oh, that's what we got to talk about. Oh, yes. I got to talk about this. So, as many of you know, one of mine and Elisa's favorite things in bed is oral sex.
Oh, okay. I'm like, you got all excited there, and I'm you guys can't tell this, but like my mouth has just been hanging open for the last 15 seconds going, what in the world is he talking about? Go ahead.
Yes. And we have not had oral sex in how long? The last time we did it, we got in a fight. Or the last time we were about to do it, we didn't get in a fight. It was just a little of a tiff. I walked out of the bedroom.
Okay, so you call that a little tiff?
I was very upset.
You were incredibly upset.
Yes.
It's probably been 4 months, 3-4 months.
At least. So anyways, Elisa finally got in with her doctor because it takes forever to get into the doctor these days, as many of you know. And so I'll let you take it from there.
Wait, okay. So I'm talking to him, and it's so funny because, Tony and I are so open about our sex life. I mean, obviously we share it with you guys every week. And so I go in there and he's like, so how you doing? And I said, great. But here's the deal. My husband, has this oral virus that we can't seem to get rid of. And he just
like bacteria infection.
Yeah, whatever. He's got this thing going on in his mouth. And, I think it's me. And so the doctor cocks one eye like, oh. And I'm thinking, you're a gynecologist. Like, nobody has ever brought this up to you before. I mean, just this kind of weird thing. Anyhow, so they do the swab test, to find out what it is. And, it comes back that it's negative for vaginitis or vaginosis or I have no yeast infection.
Yeah, there's
Let's
no
put
bacteria.
It that way. So it's not me.
But here's the thing that the doctor said. He goes, it could be external. So if you could use a cream that would... possibly take care of if it was. He didn't think it was. Okay, so we find this out on Monday, Tuesday. So come Thursday, I go, hey, Elise, have you been using that cream that the doctor said? No. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you found out Tuesday. This is something we like. And you're like, well, I just haven't had time.
So bad.
And I'm like, haven't had time. What are you...
I'm so bad with medicines. I am so bad.
No,
I am horrible with medicines. I'm the person that doesn't take their full dose. If they get like a 7-day course.
Well, at least you started. You didn't even start.
I did. No, I did start, but I wasn't doing it the twice a day like you said. But can we talk about what we found out was most likely causing it, Mr. Bicycle Man?
Oh yeah. So Saturday I went biking, and we'll wrap this up. We've gone way longer than we normally have in the last recent episodes. And we'll get to the topic.
Well, we talked about the 7 Days of Sex challenge.
Yes.
So that's on top.
Okay. So on Saturday, I went biking, and I came home, and I used these water bottles by Camelback, the Podium bottles. They got the greatest valve. They're awesome for us cyclists. Anyways, the way they're made and the way they're put together, bacteria and mold can build up in there if you don't wash them. Well, I decided, well, you know what? I better wash these. So I take them apart. And they're pretty darn.
They're black.
Not the whole thing is black, but there's a good amount of mold. And I use these 2-3 times a week.
And it's not that they don't get washed in between, but he doesn't always take all the valve components apart.
Right.
Because it's work to take these. But like around this little valve, I mean, it was just this little black circle.
Yeah, it was pretty nasty.
And I'm thinking, oh. So maybe every time you take a drink, that stuff's shooting into your mouth.
Yeah. And it was on both my bottles. So that was that. So you know what? Tonight after the podcast, we'll have some oral sex and we'll see what happens tomorrow. How's that?
Nothing like having a scientist in the family. Let's test this hypothesis.
Let's try it out. We'll see what happens. So, all right, let's hit it.
So
we've already talked a little bit about spiritual intimacy, and now we're going to dive into it a little bit more.
Right. We were going to talk, when we talked to you guys last week coming off our trip to Puerto Rico, we had mentioned that we were going to get more into, talking about prayer. And we kind of had a different direction on where we thought this week's podcast was going to go. But as so often happens, we receive an email somewhere along the week and it changes our course, which is fine. We will get into that kind of what we're going to be doing with our prayer life. But I got this email that I want to read to you, and we just want to talk about, are you aware of the people that God brings into your life? And so this is actually from my dad. And as many of you know that have been listening to us for a while, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer earlier this year. And a week ago, April 11th, he had prostate surgery, or this robotic thing. Anyway, so he's been home this whole last week. And so this was from my dad. He said, "Thank you for the many blessings my wife and I have received through your love. When the Lord foresaw my need for a hospital bed at home, he offered it to me through a friend. When the Lord foresaw our need for someone to sit with Beth while I was in surgery, he offered it to her through a friend. When the Lord foresaw that it would be good to see a friend in the midst of all the doctors, nurses, and medical staff, he sent a friend in to visit me. When the Lord foresaw that I would need to miss attending daily Mass, he offered daily communion through a friend. When the Lord foresaw that I would need someone to sit with me on Wednesday, he sent a friend to be with me all day long. When the Lord foresaw that I would need a ride to the hospital for the follow-up, yes, he offered a ride through a friend. And many years ago, when the Lord foresaw that I would need a lifelong friend and companion, he sent Beth into my life. It has often been said that the Lord is always working in our lives. It's just that he works through people. It's just that he works through the people he puts in our lives. Well, in the recent past, I have seen this happening on a daily basis. God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. Thank you for the prayers and for being the hands, feet, and voice of the Lord."
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, this gets me a little emotional because these are my parents.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so struck by a number of different things in this message that my dad had sent out to a number of people that have been praying and just being in contact with him through this journey. And really, the first thing that jumped out at me was the comment, when the Lord foresaw that I would need a lifelong friend and companion, he sent Beth into my life.
Yeah, and they've been married.
They got married in 1974.
So 39 years.
No, 30, going on 37.
37. My parents just celebrate 39.
No.
37.
They both got married in 70.
No.
Oh, maybe, is it 39? Wait, they got married in 72. Oh, so
30.
it is 39 this year.
Yeah, because I'm going to be 38, babe.
Yeah, it is 39 this year for both of them. Oh, my goodness.
See, I know my numbers. I know my dates.
But, okay. Congratulations. Gold star on the dates. How long have we been married?
14 and a half years.
What's our anniversary?
October 5th.
Okay, just checking. I want to make sure you know all the dates. How many of us ever stop to think about the Lord sending a lifelong mate, friend and companion? Do we ever look at our spouses and say, wow, you're God's gift to me? God knew I was going to need you in my life. I'm reading those words and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my parents have been married almost 40 years. They've definitely had their share of ups and downs and roller coaster rides, as anybody that's been together more than a day. And yet the level of love that comes through just that line in this message, I read that and I said to myself, how often do I think of Tony in that light? Do I look at him and say, wow, God knew what he was doing. He put you in the right place, in the right time. And that's all God's timing in place, but he put you there and he put me there. You're silent?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. The other thing that came through this was, are you aware of all those people that are in your life that do those seemingly inconsequential activities that, like my dad said at the end of this message, are being the hands, feet, and voice of the Lord? Are you the friend who, says, yeah, I can pick that up for you. I'm running to the store. I'll pick that up for you. Or, do you hear words of encouragement from a friend and never stop to think, maybe that's God telling you, hey, I'm right here. You might not listen to the still small voice, but you've got your girlfriend cheering you on.
Mm-hmm.
Or your husband calling up the phone saying, I just wanted to let you know I was thinking about you today. Maybe that's God saying, I just want you to know I was thinking about you today. Or taking care. We've got a woman in our neighborhood who has had some health problems, and while we were in Puerto Rico, ended up in the hospital, and the neighbors immediately around her are doing everything from, because she lives by herself, going through her home and getting the pieces, when she's asking for stuff in the hospital, the neighbors that have the keys and permission to enter the house are getting, the things that she needs.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking time out of their lives, and they're not doing it just because she asked them to. They're doing it because they're showing God to her. And whether she's aware of that or not, they are being the hands and feet of Jesus. And so we have so many opportunities to not only receive that, but to give it on a daily basis. And I just wonder if we're ever, obviously we're probably not fully aware all the time because there's so much stuff competing for our attention. But do you ever just find yourself going, wow, I see God in that?
Mm-hmm.
And when you do acknowledge that, do you offer praise? Do you offer thanksgiving that, oh, I see that? It's like I think back to, even this year on Andrew's birthday on December 14th, I had text messages from girlfriends all over the country saying, I'm thinking about you. And in reading this message from my dad, I'm like, that was God telling me that he had me that day.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just my girlfriends. It was God saying, I know you're hurting today. And sometimes, you've got to use that 20/20 hindsight. You've got to look back and say, oh, okay, that was God's hand there. And sometimes that's the way it works. You don't see it right when it's happening because you're like, oh, that was great that they all, sent me a text. But I read this and I know how deep my dad's relationship is and how strong his faith is in Jesus. And so I use this message and I say, oh my gosh, my dad's just giving me this amazing gift. And anybody else that reads this message and all of you, to say, are you aware?
Mm-hmm.
As you go through this week, as you look back on the last few weeks or months of your life, do you see God's hand in your life?
I think the big thing is stopping and realizing that. When Elisa and I were in Puerto Rico, we had a great opportunity to be able to do that. Obviously, we didn't have the computer, and that allowed us to see that. Prior to that, would I say I could see what was happening? At times, I think I was too busy running from one thing to the next, and I'm trying to reel that in myself to go, okay, what is going on? Do I realize the impact that someone is having in my life, and realizing that God has put that person there? One of the things that came up to us when we were in Puerto Rico, though, and this is a struggle that Elisa and I have gone through over the years. Man, we can do the intimacy lifestyle. We can have sex twice a week. We can make it happen. But for us to stay on a plan to pray together or to do a devotional together, we do it and then we don't. We do it and then we don't. And it's been a struggle. Don't know if any of you can relate to that. One of the things I had a problem with it early on was the way the church would describe couples doing this. They'd always go, "Oh, just get up in the morning and sit together and read your Bible and pray," which for many of you, that is great and it's fantastic and it works. For us, it just doesn't happen. So, we're looking at, okay, well, prior to kids, it was easy for us to go to bed at a decent time and we could sit there and we could read and we could expand and talk, and then we could pray, and it was awesome. And then kids came along and
we go to bed and we go to sleep.
Yeah. I mean, then you got kids waking you up all the time, and we still don't want to get up early. The only time I want to get up early is if I'm going on a bike ride, because I need to get up and do something. I can't get up and read. Me personally, getting up and reading puts me back to sleep. So it's a waste of time to do that. So while we were in Puerto Rico, though, this realization just sort of came upon us that, wow, we need to connect again here and how we're going to do it. And it was interesting, though, because Elisa had an email from a gal that she's been holding on to for, almost a year on the devotional Bible?
Yes, because I think it was after the last marriage retreat.
So just a little less than a year.
Yeah. And, I wouldn't ever delete the email.
Yeah.
It's funny how it's like you ever periodically go through because, you've got 100 emails. I try and stay down to 50 because on Google, that's one page for me. And
mine has like 600.
That just makes my head hurt. But, here's this message that I just can't ever seem to delete. And so finally I just told Tony, I said, because we talked about this and talk about being aware. And then this is someone that has become a friend. And, you look back and you're like, okay, I've held on to this because it's obviously there for a reason. I mean, not because it's God's word, not because it's the Bible, but because this, we're ordering this Bible so that it can be a tool for us to use in our marriage.
Right.
And part of this being aware is going, okay, what tools do I need? What tools have other people given me or us? And sometimes you have to seek those out, and sometimes they've been given to you and you might not even realize it. And so we are going to be receiving this couples devotional Bible and, looking through it and figuring out, okay, how do we make this work in our lifestyle?
I was going to say, and that's the key. How do you make it work in your life so that both of you get something out of it?
Mm-hmm. And, if you're, I didn't really think we were going to be talking about the devotional so much tonight, but since we are right now.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talked about when we were in Puerto Rico is, obviously doing it before bed doesn't work for us because with our multiple businesses, nighttime is still work time for us. And when we do go to bed, it's kind of that decompress and then go to sleep, so we both read and then it's lights out. And if we try and read out loud to each other, we yawn and go to sleep, and it is not very productive. And
I think when we read to each other, though, it's better than reading separately and then coming together and then answering questions.
Right. But one of the things we talked about in Puerto Rico was figuring out a time during the day.
Yes.
That we can do a devotional together, because we have found, and this is everything from having sex to just having some of our major conversations, we're more morning people. And so we function better if we can, figure out a time, whether it's once a week or a couple times a week, where we can do that, not get up at the crack of dawn early, but because you and I both have some flexibility in our schedules to say, okay, you know what, if we get together at 8:15 or at 8:30, then, this will work in our marriage.
Right.
But it's taking a look at all of the blessings that you have in your lives, whether they are people or things or circumstances, experiences, and realizing that God has a hand in all of it.
Mm-hmm.
In all of it. And, you know, even the bad stuff, you know, just as my dad says in this, God is good all the time. You know, in the last 4 months, he's gone through, you know, cancer diagnosis, prostate surgery, you know, all of the ups and downs associated with that. And his optimism, I mean, here's the guy that I can't even remember. When he first found out the type of surgery he was having, it was this robotic surgery. And so he goes and meets with the surgeon, and, you know, the guy's like, one of the top surgeons at Ohio State, right? And so my dad says, after the guy asks him, do you have any questions? My dad says, yeah, can I play with the robot? You're not, you know, what's the can I play with the robot? And the doctor says, no, that's my job. Any other questions, Mr. Torres?
Classic.
You know, but just the optimism and just saying, you know what? This is the hand I've got.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a little fun with this, because as uncertain and scary as it might be, I'm going to find the good in it. I'm going to see God's blessing in providing the friends, providing the doctors, providing, you know, in my dad's case, the hospital bed. I mean, when he called and said they were getting a hospital bed, I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a friend had a hospital bed, and I remember just asking Tony, who has an extra hospital bed lying around? But that was exactly what my dad needed. And so, you know, that's kind of one of those things. How could you not see God's hand in that? Because really, extra, you know, not too many of you listening probably have extra hospital beds lying around. I don't know. But, you know, how about that time when a friend calls you just when you need it? Or
hey, when you're dealing with the tough time, that you and your spouse pray together.
Right.
You know, instead of walking away and not praying together, you know, coming together as one, being this union that can come together and bring up the difficulties or the praises to God. And that is something, and I say that because I need to hear it too. You know, a lot of times when we speak from these mics, we're in a place where we're struggling a bit. You know, you guys know that we don't come up here from the mighty high almighty on a big old platform and looking down upon you. We're right here with you. We're living life just like you guys. And it's hectic and it's hard. But I will have to say, I realized is that some of the most amazing times in my life were when Elise and I were praying together, when I was praying individually more and seeking God's guidance, praying over my spouse, praying over my family. I can tell the difference. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as life goes on and, you know, we're not monks. We live in a world where things are constantly happening, that I realize right now that I'm in a time in my life where I need to get back there and I need to set aside the time. That is important for my life and for that of my wife and for that of my family.
Yeah, and it's important to recognize that. I mean, I that has even been my revelation coming off of Puerto Rico. You know, and it's to the point now where I've got a New Testament that I just carry in my purse. And, you know, if I've got 5 minutes early picking up the kids, or if I'm at the grocery store, I pick it up and I just open it up randomly. It's not like I'm reading in any kind of type of order, but I am amazed that every time I open it up, it's apparently what I need to read that day.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I look at that and I said, okay, you know, apparently this is the billboard that I'm supposed to get right now.
Right. And the biggest thing is, I don't care how many times you've heard it from the pulpit that you need to read first thing in the morning or whatever they're saying, because I know a lot of us get caught up on that. You need to sit down and find out what works for you guys. Mm-hmm. That's what's key. And that's something that Elise and I are talking about and had talked about. And we've come to the realization that, you know what, we've tried the morning stuff. It doesn't work. The nighttime stuff, we're just sort of beat down. Most evenings we're just doing things. And so we've realized, okay, we need to hone in on this time. And now we got to hone in more on how many times a week we want to do that together. You know, I will have to say that there have been times when I felt like I had to do this 7 times a week, every day. And if I didn't, I felt sort of like, wow, I'm not meeting up to some sort of standard. You know what? I think if I do it 1 day a week, I would get tons from that. And off of that 1 time a week, it's just being able to pray more and to look towards God more than what I'm doing currently.
Well, it's all about relationship.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, we desire so much from our relationship with our spouse. And we talk about that, but it's so important to know that our Heavenly Father desires relationship with us too. And so making that time, you know, right now you might not be in a season of life where you have an hour or hours every day. Those of you with children, don't beat yourself up because you don't have all of that time. But make time to be in relationship with God, because it will impact your marriage relationship. When you know, we talk about this in our book, Stripped Down. The very first chapter is called From the Top Down on Purpose. Because if you got your priorities in order with God at the top, the rest of it falls into place.
Yep, it does.
And you will be aware of God's presence in your life. You will see God's hand in the people that he brings to your life. You will see God's hand in the circumstances that present themselves in your life, and in those that you are allowed to minister to, and you are allowed to be God to other people. But you got to have that connection in order to be able to see it.
Right.
Because if you don't have that connection, then everything's left to chance.
Yep. And for those of you who haven't picked up our book, Stripped Down, 13 Keys to Unlocking Intimacy in Your Marriage, during this time leading up to the 7 Days of Sex Challenge, and during the week of, ending on May 14th at 11:59, you can pick up Stripped Down, any of the versions, soft cover, ebook, or audiobook for 15% off. Go to the post, go look all the way at the bottom, and you'll get your discount code there if you want it.
So I challenge you this week. You guys know that we, throw out challenges, just, things to keep in mind during the week. Look for God's hand this week. Look for God's feet. Look for God's voice in what happens in your life this week. And I'd love to hear what you see, what you hear, what you notice. Share with us how God's working in your life and how you see it when you're aware of it. You can always email me at askalisa@oneextraordinarymarriage.com.
Or me at asktony@oneextraordinarymarriage.com.
Do you want to give the phone number and I won't talk over you?
Yeah, and our phone number is 858-876-5663.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't talk that time when you were giving the phone number.
You're fine.
Have a great week, you guys, and be aware.
Yeah, and we are looking forward to seeing you join us on the 7 Days of Sex Challenge. Have a great week, and we love you guys.
Thanks for listening to the One Extraordinary Marriage podcast. We would love to hear from you. You can go ahead and give us a call at area code 858-876-5663 or send us an email to info@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. The website is oneextraordinarymarriage.com, and while you're there, you can sign up for our Marriage Minute Monday newsletter, and you can also purchase Tony and Elisa's new book, Stripped Down. It's available now in print, audio, and ebook formats. Also, the One Extraordinary Marriage podcast has sponsorship opportunities available now. If your business is interested in sponsoring this podcast, please contact us at oneextraordinarymarriage.com.